1-0 to the Arsenal goes the old chant from the Gunners. And guess what the scoreline was today? 1-0. Crystal Palace were tough opponents for Arsenal, but they came through the challenge, especially since they had 10 men. Now, Tomiyasu was dismissed after 67 minutes for two somewhat dodgy calls, considering that Kai Havertz had held on to the ball for longer than Tomiyasu did when he got his first yellow card, and even more so because the tug that he got the second yellow card for was very cheap. Let's call it what it was. However, Arsenal come out unscathed from this game, despite the fact that they got another defensive person falling by the wayside. But what they gained from this game was grit, determination, and composure to face off against an opponent that has been very tricky for them in the last few years. What does this tell us about Arsenal's title challenges? This is one of those games that you need to win if you want to call yourself a champion, and even more so against a team that has a recently good record against you. A lot can be said about Selhurst Park and how the fans are always right on top of you, and you could hear it today. A few penalty claims from the Palace fans had the Arsenal team looking a little shaken. But yet it was the Arsenal team that got a penalty kick. And guess who took it? Not Bukayo Saka, but Martin Odegaard. His composure was something to talk about, especially when the game is in the balance. Crystal Palace gave a good account of themselves, despite the fact that Arsenal were on top for large parts of that game. Eddie Nketiah was pretty good. I think that he needs to improve a lot on his finishing. Anybody could tell you that. But the two chances that he had, especially the one-on-one, is a gilt-edge opportunity. And he tried his best to try and dink the ball on top of the keeper. However, you need somebody with good composure to finish those chances off, which is why you will find a lot of Arsenal fans still saying that they need a striker and questioning why Folarin Balogun is not getting a chance right now, especially since Jesus has been injured, and it doesn't seem as though Arteta is likely going to bring in another striker. This is the game that is remembered for Granit Xhaka's beef with his fans. This is the game that you can remember Arsene Wenger losing 3-0 to Sam Allardyce. This is the fixture that you can remember Unai Emery losing at home to Crystal Palace that basically kicked them out of Europe. This is a fixture that says a lot about where Arsenal is now. Arsenal are a team that are starting to believe in themselves. This should be a little scary for the rest of the league. If last season wasn't anything to go by, the fact that Arsenal won 10 out of 12 London derbies, the fact that Arsenal can go to Crystal Palace in a fixture that they normally struggle in and manage to get the win with 10 men. If you're an Arsenal fan, you have got to be liking what Mikel Arteta is doing with his team. And the sounds that are being made from the squad with Declan Rice talking about Arteta's vision and how welcoming the team has been to him and how much he's learned from everybody in the squad, not least Arteta himself, has got to sit very well with Arsenal fans. Now, if there are a couple of things that Arsenal fans might need to be worried about, is the fact that they seem to leave you on a nail biter for the vast majority of the second half. Last week they did it with Nottingham Forest, and this week they did it with Crystal Palace. And they will be hoping for much less of a tense game against Fulham at home. But Arsenal don't make it that easy for you. They did have a very tense meeting against Fulham last season at home. And after that, they have Manchester United. But as far as Crystal Palace are concerned, they gave a decent account of themselves. Now, Arsenal were on top for majority of the game. But the fact that Crystal Palace could say that during the second half after the red card, they went toe to toe with Arsenal, and maybe might feel a little bit aggrieved that they didn't get the equalizer, speaks well to what Roy Hodgson is, trying to do with his team. Now, Crystal Palace, I don't feel have made enough progression as far as their team goes. And Hodgson himself spoke about it in his post-match comments, saying that in comparison to Arsenal's substitutes, which Arsenal had a very strong bench, he did feel a little bit understocked with what he had to bring on, especially when they're chasing the game. Crystal Palace will be okay. I think they have relative stability under the guidance of Roy Hodgson. He knows the club. He's taken them through more difficult times. So Crystal Palace will be fine. I do think they will be a regular mid-table team. But the story of the day is Arsenal and what this game showed us as far as their determination to hold a victory with a red card, especially if you remember their more recent past games like Newcastle, when Newcastle came down from 4-0 to tie the game 4-4 with the late Czech Tiote's goal. You have to admire where Mikel Arteta is taking this team. Now, some people will have some qualms about his team choice, the repeated use of Thomas Partey as a right back, and why Gabriel Magalhaes is not starting has been ruffling a few feathers. But we are spectators, and he is the one who's charged with bringing out his team day in, day out. He knows what he is trying to do with the team, and you can't argue with the fact that he's received pretty good results over the last 2 years. So I would kind of quiet down on being a little nervous or not knowing what he's trying to do, because he's going to be answerable to everybody at the end of the season. And I'm pretty sure he realizes that it's important to hang on to the coattails of Manchester City in order to prevent them from building a gap at the start of the season. And it's going to be good for the league because we don't seem to have a strong Manchester United, and we don't have a consistent Chelsea. We don't have a consistent Liverpool. And right now, Arsenal are the best bet to challenge Manchester City. Now, we're going to see how they're going to deal with the Champions League once that gets underway. And everybody is going to have to deal with that. Newcastle are going to have to deal with that. City themselves are going to feel like they need to defend their crowd. But more importantly, Arsenal are going to need to galvanize their fans and make them believe more as they chase down their first title in 20 years. At some point, it becomes a mental block, just like it did with Crystal Palace for a while. But 3 victories on, including a double over Crystal Palace last season, you see the rebirth of this new Arsenal. And yeah, as an Arsenal fan myself, I have had my issues with the Kroenkes, but they have backed Arteta. And Arteta has backed himself with his tactics, because anybody could go into a game as tricky as this and not be as brave as he was to play Thomas Partey as a right back and to invert him. And this is probably a very new position for Thomas Partey in trying to invert himself into the midfield. And even more so, to have the courage to take Kai Havertz, who has had a torrid time at Chelsea, at least as far as last season was concerned, and bring him into the fold with a lot of questioning Arsenal fans who still do not know why he was bought. And even 2 games in, are still wondering what he gives to the team. At the end of the day, Arsenal now join Brighton and Manchester City as the only other teams with a 100% record. And it is important for them to keep on trying to hold on to Manchester City's pace, because depending on how staggering it might be at the start of the season, this is a team that has gone 18 victories in a row before. This is a team that has done 15 in a row before. So you have to hang on to their coattails if you want to have any chance at winning this title. But at this point, this is all I got for you guys. Please consider leaving that like and that subscribe. I will catch you guys in the next video where I'm going to do my reactions to my predictions from this weekend's fixtures. It's been your boy Izzy. The subscribe button is right down there. I will catch you on the next one.